Questions about the rules? No? Perfect. All right, we will go ahead and start with Rithik. This is a general question that all of you will answer. I can also repeat the question at any time. The question for you, Rithik, is as the campus transitions into a new era of leadership, how do you plan to collaborate with administrators, new and old, in order to keep campus safe, engaging, and welcome to all who wish to come here? The floor is yours.
Thank you for that question. Is this mic working?
Turn it on.
Hello?
There you go. I'll restart your timer.
Okay. Thank you for that question. So yes, the way I want to work is, so when I launched my campaign, my whole goal was collaborating with various departments, UFAB, AdFab, and whatnot, various departments on campus, including the administration. I know that one way for ASCSU to succeed is by collaborating rather than fighting. Which is my whole premise. I want to make sure we establish good relations with administration, the Board of Governors, the President, the Chancellor, and also various department heads and all offices in this university. Because the only way we can move forward is not single-handedly. It's not just ASCSU doing things by itself. It's by collaborating with various departments to bring out the best that's going to help students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mia, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. As the campus transition into an era of new leadership, how do you plan to collaborate with administrators, new and old, in order to keep campus safe, engaging, and welcome to all who wish to come here? You have the floor.
Thank you. I've been a part of ASCSU the past 3 years, and so I've experienced a wide variety of leadership, and so I think that is something that definitely needs to change in terms of how we create a safe space in ASCSU, how we create a tangible place to make good changes. And so something that I've thought about a lot, something that I thought about a lot was how we can make those tangible changes, how we can be better leaders. And so, being in my third year of ASCSU, I think it's time to change. I think it's time to change leadership and how we run things and to create a safe space and to kind of create that open door policy and kind of create a consensus with our leadership teams, create a consensus with our administration, and make sure we're on the same page as well as with our student body.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Mr. Desalvo, would you like me to repeat the question?
I got it.
Okay, awesome. The floor is yours.
So I think one of the benefits of this campaign is that I've served as Speaker of the Senate for the last year, and I've already interacted with all of these administration officials. I can tell you firsthand that it takes about a semester to get to know them and really understand what your role is compared to what they can do for you. And, in my administration, we could just hit the ground running. One of the tangible things that I've done is I brought President Parsons to one of my classes to interact with the students in my classes so that they could see that administration is not just President Parsons sitting in an ivory tower sending out emails to students. It's that President Parsons understands her role and the role of students. And so I think having that mindset, having that experience is helpful.
Thank you. Mr. Duffield, would you like me to repeat the question? Okay. As the campus transitions into an era of new leadership, how do you plan to collaborate with administrators, new and old, in order to keep campus safe, engaging, and welcome to all who wish to come here? You have the floor.
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying I'm the accountant right now. I work really closely with the ASCSU advisors, Jess and Jesse. They've been here for a while, and I think it's definitely imperative to listen to a lot of things that they say. I know that Jesse's stressed with me the importance of following a budget based around what's happened in the past and what we should allocate money to. So I think definitely just starting off with listening to the advisors that we have and utilizing that resource. And another thing, I think when you talk to students on campus, if they do know what ASCSU is, they think it's a fairly toxic environment. And I think that's one of the reasons I brought Emily in, just a fresh perspective on how we can bring collaboration within ASCSU.
Thank you very much. Now we will be moving on to the personal questions. Again, if you would like to rebuttal any of these candidate questions, you may raise your hand, and rebuttals are 30 seconds. Candidate questions are 1 minute long. So we will start with Ms. Laffey. You mentioned that all student fee areas will be looked at and evaluated before decisions are made in your Instagram. What criteria are you evaluating before you make decisions on student fees? If you would like me to repeat the question, I can.
Yeah, no, I'm good, thanks. Thank you so much for the question. I'm the only vice presidential candidate running who has served a full term on the Student Fee Review Board and seen the process from beginning to end. And I really do have a great understanding of how that process works. One of the ways the Student Fee Review Board, the way it works now, is oftentimes the only thing we look at when student fees come to present is whether or not the numbers like actually add up, which is a great part, an important part of the Student Fee Review Board process. But increasing student fees or keeping them the same is not so much, it's a huge part of the budget aspect, but it's also about looking at what students need on campus right now. And so I really want to take that aspect and add it to what the Student Fee Review Board already does. And that way benefit students on the Student Fee Review Board and the students that the student fees go to.
Thank you very much. Our next question is for Mr. Trout. One of the pillars that you are running on is inclusion and student oversight. How might you go about staffing a student tuition review board, and what might that look like?
Thank you. Oh. Hello, there we go. Thank you. There's a delay in the mic. That's so fun. But thank you for that question. Getting staffing for the student tuition review or proposed student tuition review board, that hasn't been fully thought out yet. Of course, we want students involved, but first we want to establish the board, right? We want to make sure that that's a thing that is established. And something in doing the research on this is the important thing to note is the Student Fee Review Board was established in state law because students advocated for that to be a thing. But within the same state law, that's like 600 pages on this title of post-secondary education, student input is only mentioned twice. Once about student fees and another one similar to student fees. We think that's a little crazy that in a 600-page document it's only mentioned twice. And so what we plan to do within that is advocating at the state level and saying, hey, this is something that is really important. You know, we get some type of oversight in the Student Fee Review Board, which I'm currently a member of, but we don't get the same with tuition, which we think is unfair.
Trout. All right, my next question is for Mr. Silverheart. A large part of what you stand for is mental and physical health. How do you plan on making that a priority here on campus?
Yeah, and so, hi everybody, Alex again. I have been the Director of Health and Wellbeing for the past year in ASCSU, so I've worked extremely closely with a lot of the officials over at the Health Network. I'm very aware of the resources that are already available to students, and something that one of the people at the Health Network tells me all the time is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have a lot of resources here on campus already. How many people know about you at CSU? A few. So educating people about these not only in-person resources, but online resources that students can use from the comfort of their own home would be fantastic. I'm currently working with the SLICE office to educate all RSO leaders on campus about what these mental health resources are and how to also identify people that are in need of these mental health resources. So this isn't looking into the future, this is looking at what I'm doing right now. Another example of what we've been doing this year is mental health tabling. We do it every month, and I paired up with different SDPS offices in order to also include that diversity, equity, and inclusion portion into mental health on campus.
Thank you, Mr. Silverheart.
Thank you.
All right, and my final question for the Vice President for right now is Miss Ashenbrenner, In your pillar of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you talk about U+2 and providing affordable housing to students. Can you please tell me how the two are related and why you think that you'll be able to make these changes?
Yeah, so, sorry. With U+2, it's a really touchy and hard subject in dealing with because it is a law and we cannot necessarily, awesome. Put your ladders in the air.
If you would like, I can restart your timer.
I mean, whatever, it's all good.
Okay, we can. Okay.
But within, sorry, can you rephrase the question?
Yeah,
I was that whole thing.
In your pillar of diversity, equity, and inclusion, you talk about U+2 and providing affordable housing to students. Can you please tell me how the two are related and why you think you'll be able to make these changes?
Yeah, so like I was saying, U+2 is a really, really hard subject to kind of battle. So what me and what Ashton and I have really devoted most of our time to is on-campus student housing and things that we can control, because U+2 and issues that are in regard to U+2, they're tricky and it takes a lot of movement behind it. And with the current nature of the student body and advocating for issues that are important to the student body, we would like to take it to a step of on-campus student housing so that we can control what we can do.
Thank you very much. All right. We have a question for Mr. Correa. Yesterday, you posted on your campaign Instagram account that you are planning to introduce napping stations on campus. Can you explain the logistics behind how you would create these stations?
Yes, definitely. Now, napping stations isn't a new concept. A couple of universities already have it, and it's been proven to be very effective to boost the mental health of students. And that's where we're going with mental health. We're going to start off with napping stations. And when I've spoken to students about it, a lot of them say that, hey, I want a napping station. Now remember, ASCSU does have the resources, we have the contacts and the money to bring this to fruition. We intend on collaborating with boards like UFAB and the library, because we hope that we can build this station somewhere in the library. It's not going to be too expensive if we do collaborate with UFAB, and we get some ASCSU fees involved in that as well. And that's how I want to bring up a napping station on campus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ritter, you have talked about creating a press secretary position to benefit transparency aspects of ASCSU. Where will the money for this position come from, and how will the secretary's words reach the students?
Thank you so much for that question. So in terms of creating these positions, Sammy and I were talking a bit about how we want to structure our executive cabinet last year, and exactly what we can do with positions, what might be helpful and beneficial to students, and what might not be. And so a lot of the positions that come from this would be from payroll. And so for those of you that don't know, our budget for ASCSU is $1.3 million, and so there's $120,000 that goes to the Senate discretionary, and there's $230,000 to $40,000, I think that's what the number is, that goes to the executive cabinet. And so in terms of that, and then there's also $150,000 that goes to the BSOF. And so with the executive cabinet, that would come from the payroll, and that's something that Sammy and I are still adjusting in how we want to create the executive cabinet. And that's something we will talk about with our team and talk about with the administration, our advisors, and see what's the most tangible things and things that we can do. And so in terms of that, with the press secretary position, we feel like there's not a lot of transparency with the students and knowing what is happening.
Ritter. We have a 30-second rebuttal. You have 30 seconds, Mr. Silverheart, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody, again. Is this working? Oh, perfect. I would just like to hear, ASCSU is an organization of about, I think, over 100 students this semester. We've gotten a really good turnout. Why would the introduction of just one more person change the way in which students think about ASCSU, the way students know about ASCSU? I feel like having an organization of over 100 students should be able to educate the students enough. And there's a lot of other areas on campus where we could really use help.
Thank you. Ms. Ritter, you have a 30-second rebuttal if you would like.
Yeah, thank you so much. So in terms of the transparency position, there's nothing that exists in terms of the press secretary having a press conference, whether that's with our administration, our president, as well as our president of the office in ASCSU, and having it with our vice president. And so I think that's something that's really important that students want to see. I've talked to so many students that are outside of ASCSU, and that's something that they would love to see in terms of what is happening internally and externally with our university. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Desalvo, we have a question for you. Another issue you are running on is advocacy. How do you plan to be a voice for students and represent their needs?
I plan on doing what I've done even before this campaign even started. It's my job as a student body leader to advocate for students, and that's exactly what I've done, and it's exactly what I'm going to continue to do. The advocacy work, such as telling the Board of Governors that a tuition increase, shaking the piggy bank of students to get extra money for their pet projects, is unacceptable. We need someone in your corner fighting against that to make sure that college is affordable. The advocacy piece, as far as going to City Council, like I said, I'm the only candidate that has spoken to City Council about U+2. I'm serious about this issue. I believe that the political will is there to change it, and so we need people to show up, not just talk about U+2, not just have it as a campaign point, but actually show up, do the work, and take down U+2.
Thank you very much, Mr. Desalvo. All right, we have a question for Mr. Duffield. You have said staying strong in the classroom starts with maintaining health in the mind and body. What will you do to help students with their mental health in times where mental health is at an all-time low for many college students?
Yeah, so I think this starts definitely in UC Health in terms of counseling. I know myself and Emily both shared the same story of being in a time where we needed some counseling and therapy, and then we went into the UC Health Center, and they tried to schedule us out further and further. 6 weeks out isn't going to help anybody. Getting outsourced therapy, that's not going to help anybody. That's expensive. So I think it starts for advocating for better rotations for counselors, better pay, more counselors, etc.
Thank you very much. Mr. Silverheart, you have a 30-second rebuttal starting right now.
It's more of a clarification point. UC Health is actually a hospital in the community. I work at UC Health as a CNA. The health center on campus is the CSU Health Network, just for people watching.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now go back to questions for our presidential candidates. We will start left to right. So Rithik, we will start with you. You have 45 seconds to answer this question. How can you help disabled students through your administration?
Thank you for asking that question. So one thing I wanted to do last year, and I realized, I've spoken to a couple people about it, I realized that as a senator, I would not be able to do it. And that's ensuring that disabled students have a means of getting to their classes. Let's put it this way. What I want to do is I want a system that's followed in London, where disabled folks are given a particular card that they can waive at public transportation, and public transportation stops whenever it's safe, despite it not being an actual bus stop. And that's a phenomenal thing that happens in London. And I want the same thing to happen in Fort Collins as well. So I want to collaborate with the city to bring this project to fruition.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ritter, you have the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Your question is, how can you help disabled students through your administration?
So that's something that I've talked about a lot with our SDPS offices, because obviously it's not just my own identities that are important, and it's all of our SDPS offices. And that's something I've had a lot of collaboration with, whether that's, not with NAC, but with APAC, BAC, El Centro, SDC, WJC, Pride, etc. And so I think it's really important to get perspectives and get a consensus of other students, and especially our SDC Center. And that's something I've done a lot of collaboration with our fellow SDC senators as well, me and working in the legislative branch. And so we've talked a lot about different projects and ideas of things that we have done in the past, things that we're looking forward to in the past in terms of creating an accessibility caucus as well in the future. And so that's just sort of an example for that question.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ritter. All right, Mr. Desalvo, you have the same question. Would you like it to be repeated?
No.
Okay.
So I have kind of a personal example for this question. My grandmother was a double amputee, and so my entire life I knew her being in a wheelchair. And she was an incredible and one of the strongest women that I will ever meet in my entire life. But I knew that she had mobility issues, and there were certain places that she simply could not go. The CSU campus should be accessible for everyone. If you want to get an education at this university, you should be able to. And so the advocacy work that I'm going to do for the disabled community, it's making sure that we're working with facilities, that if there's a button that is not working where you need to open up a door, that gets fixed immediately.
Thank you, Mr. Desalvo.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, sorry. You have a 30-second rebuttal starting right now.
Just want to ask, I'm a firm believer in terms of representation and doing stuff in advocacy of the motto, nothing about us without us. And so I'm wondering how you plan to have folks who are within the disabled community help you impact decisions about disability advocacy and anything like that.
Okay. Mr. Desalvo, if you would like, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, it's about active listening, and it's about working with students who are affected most closely by these issues. I'm going to work with the SDC to make sure that all the concerns that those folks have are being voiced, and there's an advocate, there's a champion in their corner telling administration that these are issues that students are facing that need to be addressed. That's how you get that done.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Desalvo. And for Mr. Duffield, we have the same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Yeah. Your question is, how can you help disabled students through your administration? You have the floor.
So I think a lot of leading an organization comes down to leading your leadership, specifically the executive team. So I think one important aspect to appeal to people with disabilities is to make advertisements, like specifically in SDC, targeted towards people with disabilities, so that they can be just as represented in the executive team. And whether that be, like we've had a lot of experience this campaign period with alt text, So if anything like that, put in to ensure that people are given the same opportunities to apply for these executive positions.
Thank you, Mr. Duffield. We will have one more vice presidential question before we move on to our 5-minute intermission. So we will start with Ms. Laffey. What is something that your campaign promises that the others do not? You have 45 seconds to answer this question.
Thanks so much. So, aside from the napping stations, which was Rithik already has spoken about, one of the things is collaboration with student fee boards. I currently serve as the secretary of the University Facility Fee Advisory Board, and it's my pastoral on SFRB. Both of those combined, I know a lot about the fee review boards and the asset that they can be to ASCSU and how they're not really being utilized by ASCSU. And so those fee boards get over $360 of the $1,300 that you pay every single semester as a full-time student to be a Colorado State University. And so I know how to collaborate with those boards. I know what they do. I know how they can help us. And that's something that we bring to the table that no one else does.
Thank you, Ms. Laffey. Mr. Trout, you have the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
Yes, please.
Your question is, what is something your campaign promises that the others do not? You have 45 seconds to answer this question.
Thank you for that question. I think it's real tangible changes and big projects, but we can talk more about this later. But primarily what we are promising is that we are going to listen to students. Within our link tree on our Instagram, we have a Google form where students can tell us what they want to see their student government do within this next year, right? Because there's a lot of that disconnect between what ASCSU does and what ASCSU doesn't. And so we're hopeful that with that link tree or with that Google form information, that ASCSU will have that guiding light to know what we're going to do within next year.
Thank you very much. Mr. Silverheart, you have the same question. What is something your campaign promises that the others do not? You have the floor.
Of course. I know our Instagram at Desalvo Silverheart talks a lot about all the different projects we want to do. And the thing is, I hear a lot of talk tonight about tangible items, but I feel like I am one of the few people maybe on stage that have done projects with ASCSU and has had complete follow-through. If you aren't aware, there are pregnancy tests that are free to students on campus. There's actually 4 different locations on campus where you can get free pregnancy tests. And that's something that I was able to accomplish along with Senator McCall. And just the follow-through that I've been able to do within ASCSU, even just within this past year, has been fantastic. So all of our campaign points, we want to make sure there's follow-through. An idea that we have is bringing a syllabus bank to campus. This is something that exists on other campuses, but with the amount that students use Rate My Professor, we need something.
Thank you, Mr. Silverheart.
Of course. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Ashenbrenner, you have the same question. What is something your campaign promises that the others do not? You have 45 seconds to answer, and the floor is yours.
Awesome. So being an outsider of the ASCSU community, I feel like we bring kind of a fresh perspective to student body government. I think more specifically, though, getting more of the student body active and engaged in ASCSU issues. Change doesn't happen unless there is voices that are being heard and listened to. And we can promise that we will listen and we will not act before listening to the student body community as a whole and hearing the issues that are most important to the student body, not just within ASCSU, but outreaching to other students.
Thank you, Ms. Ashenbrenner. Seeing no rebuttals, we will now move on to our 5-minute intermission. We'll debate. We are now at the part of our debate where we can include audience questions. Please make sure to include the name of the candidate that you want to ask the question for. Okay. We are going to start left to right again. We have a question for Mr. Correa. In one of your Instagram reels, you explained that you are going to create a complaint box to better reach students. If ASCSU is struggling with student awareness, how will they know to use such a box? Furthermore, how will you inform students about the box and ensure that it's being used? You have the floor.
Thank you. My whole goal with this campaign is once I get elected to this office, I'm going to make sure everybody knows what ASCSU is, what ASCSU does, and what ASCSU can do, what ASCSU has the capabilities of doing. There are multiple resources we can use. For example, LSE advertisements, dining hall advertisements, dining hall cards. There are advertisements in other buildings as well, posters, multiple things that can be used. The ASCSU Instagram page can also post ads instead of just posting it on the Instagram. That's how I want to increase outreach to students and let them know, hey, this is ASCSU. And I also want to have the complaint box right outside the ASCSU's doorstep so that people passing by in the LSE see it and try and utilize it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ritter, you talk about hiring experts and passionate employees to work on the issue of U+2. What will they do, and how will they be more qualified than the average student when it comes to this area?
Thank you so much for that question. I have been talking about this so much, and so many people believe that it's the president and the vice president that do so much for the organization. I have to disagree because I think that our executive cabinet works together as a team. That's what makes the dream work. I think that's what makes so many projects be so successful. And you know, a big example that I've thought about with U+2, our housing and security director from 2021 to 22, Ben Rosler, and that's someone that I've been working along with on my campaign team and discussing U+2 and our tangible plans for that. And so we've discussed a lot about, you know, not making empty promises and creating a strategic plan and exactly how tangible we want to be with U+2, because there's been a lot of empty promises the past few years that I've been here, and figuring out a structure exactly how we want to tackle that in terms of making a map, in terms of me being more transparent with those things.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter.
Thank you.
We have a 30-second rebuttal from Mr. Desalvo. You have the floor.
I'm just really curious what these tangible plans that candidate Ritter is referring to. We have what's called the City Council Action Committee that we've put a lot of work into, and it's a team effort. It's not just an individual effort, but I have seen neither candidate Ritter or candidate Trout at any of those meetings advocating for the taking down of U+2. And so you could talk about tangible plans, but what the students need are tangible actions.
No, I agree. Sorry.
You're fine. You have a 30-second rebuttal that starts right now.
I agree, and it's not just me that has to work on these things. I think we work as a team together, and I believe that in order to get work done, we have to work together with our city council and work together as the president. And the reason I have not been a part of these meetings because I have a job, and our staff meetings are from 7:30 to 9:30 every single Tuesday, and so that's whenever we do have our city council meetings, and I am not able to attend them. Otherwise, I would lose my job. However, I will not be doing this job next year, and so I will be able to attend these meetings. However, I do communicate with people that are on the city council committee meetings as well. Thank you.
Okay, and we have one more question for Mr. Duffield before we move on to some audience questions. Mr. Duffield, you have talked about, quote, rebuilding the interaction we lost during the pandemic, end quote. Can you tell me what communication was like before the pandemic and why you wish to see it return to this style of communication?
I definitely disagree with what you mean about like going back to a different style of communication. We're always evolving and changing. And I think now more than ever we're using media and technology to communicate. But I think if we do go back to something, it would be talking as much in person as we can. I mean, me and Emily have been outside. Really what we wanted to do is just get to know the students. I just want to know what they're thinking. So going up to them and being like, what do you want to see? What was your experience in the dorms? And I think overall we've just learned, you learn a lot from being in someone's face.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to audience questions. We have a question for Jessica and Rithik. The question says, I've talked to some students and everyone seems to like the napping station idea. Who are you going to be working on this idea? You have 45 seconds to answer this question.
Yes. Thank you so much for the question. So one of the things that I mentioned before was how we've been in conversations with UFAB, and I've sat through those meetings, and right now the library has some like empty rooms that aren't being used for anything at all. And so I think collaborating with the library is our first step, seeing if they want to help us with this. Going to UFAB for funding, perhaps through the library. There's all sorts of agencies around campus that I think, given the high success rate of this on other campus, would be more than willing, more than happy with the positive feedback that we have received from students to discuss this and to work with us to get these napping stations on campus, since this is something that students seem to like as an idea.
Thank you. I also messed up. You actually have a minute to answer that question, so if you have any further thoughts, you may continue. If you do not, that is okay.
Yeah, sure. So UFAB is so great because you come to the board and you give presentations about whatever idea it is, and sitting through those presentations, I know exactly how to format them, and I know how to help whoever it is that we are helping get the napping stations. This is definitely a collaborative project. So whoever that is to help to use your student fee dollars for something that's worthwhile. So that's how I plan for that.
Thank you, Ms. Laffey. We have a question for Nick Desalvo and Alex Silverheart. What tangible changes will you make to show you aren't fostering performative activism? And this is a question from the audience.
Well, it's actually about doing things. It's, activism, a lot of it is about preparing and getting the message out, and that's exactly what we've been doing. It's not performative by any means. What's performative is putting U+2 or the tuition increase on your campaign platform, but doing nothing before the election season to actually address it. That's performative activism. And what we're doing is the exact opposite. We're championing these issues, and we're making sure that these issues are at the forefront.
We see the same thing with mental health. I feel like I am the most well-versed in what mental health resources we have on campus, and I've actually reached out to students and educated them at least probably once a week in different student kind of organizations and settings to educate them. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a question for Mr. Trout and Ms. Ritter. How do you plan to ensure all voices are heard on campus beyond what's already been done and what has been said? Excuse me, let me reread that. How do you plan to ensure all voices are heard on campus beyond what's already been done and what's been said for the ASCSU space and student body?
Thank you for that question. I think it's really opening up that dialogue with students, and that's something that I've really grown to better do within the ASCSU space. Of even things that I disagree with folks on, I want to have an open dialogue with folks on. The big topics. That's what we're here to do. We're here to have these serious conversations and to learn and grow. ASCSU is supposed to help us prepare for the big world, sort of thing. And I think it's really important that we have those conversations. And also doing more outreach. I think that's something that we've slowly but surely been trying to improve on. And I think that's something that we need to expand upon more, whether it's expanding where we are on social media or whether that gets us out in front of more classrooms. I think those are all tangible things that we can do to let students know more about what we're doing on campus.
Thank you very much. We also have an audience question for everyone. How do you plan, we will start with Rithik and Jessica. How do you plan on ensuring that personal disagreements within ASCSU do not detract what is best for the student body? You have 1 minute to answer this question.
Yes, I think separation and integration is how I want to go by with this. I think every single department, for example, the Senate, Exec, and Judicial should have their independence, but should also collaborate with each other. Now, differences happen. That's why we are human, right? If we didn't have differences, we wouldn't be human. If we didn't have differences, we wouldn't need an organization of 100 people. It would just be one. So differences are good. It's not the worst thing possible. What we need is collaboration out of those differences. We need to work on the points that we can collaborate with, and we need to disregard points that we cannot collaborate on. And at the end of the day, we need to focus. We all should have the one main goal that's benefiting students. So collaborate in whatever ways possible that can benefit students, and push away any disagreements. Like, you can disagree, it's good to disagree, you get to learn something out of a disagreement, and that's exactly how I want to go about with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. Ms. Ritter and Mr. Trout, you have a minute to respond. How do you plan on ensuring that personal disagreements within ASCSU do not detract what is best for the student body?
Thank you for that question. Like I said, it's not just my opinions that matter. We all have differences in opinions, and it's important to have a consensus of where we agree and how we plan to make a solution or a resolution and those kinds of things. As someone who has been trained in student conflict resolution the past 2 years, working in conflict with roommates, that's something that I really apply with mediation and problem solving and creating a resolution and a resolution for situations and making sure that we all have a consensus of where we agree on. And I think it's important to have that so that we can do tangible change, make successful change, and really make good things in our organization and really just, make improvements otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to Mr. Desalvo and Mr. Silverheart. We have the same question. How do you plan on ensuring that personal disagreements within ASCSU do not detract what is best for the student body?
The good thing about serving as speaker for the last year is that I've developed quite thick skin. I started the first Senate session with the senator calling me corrupt. And so at the end of the day, I don't care what you think about me. What really matters is if you're there for the right reasons and you're there to help students. If you're there to help students, then I will work with you regardless of what you think about me or what my feelings are about you. Because at the end of the day, this job is about serving the student body. That's what I've done, and that's what I'll continue to do.
I've been in a similar boat to Nick. I've been attacked within the ASCSU space, sometimes respectfully, sometimes not, but I keep coming back because I care about the student body. I care about what you think, I care about what you feel, and most importantly, I care about your mental, physical, and sexual health. I'm a doctor at heart. I've been a CNA and a personal care provider in senior homes for the past 3 or 4 years, a fifth of my life. I know what it means to care about people. I know what it means to be compassionate and to listen to people.
Thank you, Mr. Silverheart.
Of course.
All right, we will now move on to Mr. Duffield and Ms. Ashenbrenner. Your question is, how do you plan on ensuring that personal disagreements within ASCSU do not detract what is best for the students? You have 1 minute. The floor is yours.
I think that's one reason why I really wanted to take this position as a president, is to really learn how to bring people together. I think it starts outside of ASCSU, outside of everything else, just hitting them up on the phone, asking them how their day's going, really establishing that connection so that they keep coming back. And that's another reason why I brought Emily.
Yeah, I think that it is important to serve the community before making judgments on who serves within ASCSU. Whatever bias or whatever disagreements that come in within the chamber, keep that there. But we are there to serve the student body first and foremost. And I think through having those conversations and listening before dumping and spewing, because so much of it is we want to talk, but sometimes taking a step back and listening can really prove a good point in conflict resolution and cooling down. So just listening.
Thank you, Ms. Ashenbrenner. Okay. We are now going to move on to some vice presidential questions. We will start with Ms. Laffey. With a low voter turnout in the election last year, what is your campaign doing to support voter engagement?
Thank you so much for the question. So what our campaign is doing is visiting all sorts of classrooms, engaging people wherever we can, talking to people in different colleges of different majors. We're not just a campaign out on the plaza. For those of you who, I think I see some faces who I've seen in at least 2 or 3 of the same classes, members of ASCSU. I've had people come up to me and be like, you've been in 5 of my classes. Actually going to classes to reach more people is something that Rithik and I have been doing and focusing on as much as we can, because that's where we can get an audience to at least tell people what ASCSU is and what we hope to do for them. And so that's a really important and integral part of our campaign at the base, and that's what we've been doing, is just visiting as many people as possible.
Thank you, Ms. Laffey. Mr. Trout, you have the same question. With a low voter turnout in the election last semester, what is your campaign doing to support voter engagement?
Thank you for that question. And I think that really goes down to that disconnect between ASCSU and the student body. And so we are really honored to have a massive outreach team within our campaign that has been going out to student orgs and within the Fort Collins community and, telling them our message and telling them, hey, there's, candidates running for all sorts of things this year, whether it's for speaker or for president, vice president. And we've been going out to student orgs. We've been meeting students where they are. We have heard concerns from a lot of student orgs saying, hey, we have problems with the X, Y, and Z. And we've been taking a lot of that feedback. And that's been truly the most incredible process throughout this entire thing, is talking to students and being engaged with them where they are. Because where they are with their clubs is the subjects that they're most passionate in, is what I have found.
Thank you, Mr. Trout.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Silverheart, you have the same question. How do you plan on ensuring, I just asked that. Excuse me, sorry.
I remember the question.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that.
Fantastic. Yeah, so we've also reached out to classrooms and we've reached out to organizations. We've specifically reached out to organizations that have responded to us and say they haven't had outreach from candidates in the past 3-4 years. This is what the president of the Wildlife Society told me, and I thought that was absolutely insane. I feel like our campus is reaching parts of campus that haven't been reached by ASCSU for years, and I think that's super empowering. I'm not super great at moonwalking, but I have learned how to walk backwards. Tabling on the plaza, I've been handing out flyers and talking to students and being like, hey, what do you want to see changed on campus? What do you like about our campaign? What would you like to see more? And I'll walk with them all the way to the Lory Student Center. I'll walk with them all the way down to Yates. One day I got over 20,000 steps just campaigning the entire day. You can probably see my sunburn from yesterday too.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right. Ms. Ashenbrenner, you have the same question. With a low voter turnout in the election last year, what is your campaign doing to support voter engagement? The floor is yours.
Well, I think speaking on the past 3 years of me being a student here at CSU, I don't necessarily think that I have ever engaged or known about ASCSU within campus prior to Ashton asking me to join the campaign team. So I think the important thing about our campaign is we're reaching people outside of ASCSU, not just specifically within that. We want leadership positions within ASCSU to build the community through different people representing them, and that is huge. Yes, so making ASCSU...
Thank you very much, Ms. Ashenbrenner. All right, we have an audience question to Mr. Desalvo. How do you plan on taking accountability for the comments and threats made against SDPS senators on March 8th?
So to say that these were threats is very, very disingenuous. I don't think accountability amounts to something that could be misconstrued as a threat. There have been people who have been disruptive and, quite frankly, vile to their fellow colleagues and their fellow Rams, and to me that's absolutely unacceptable. Telling them that accountability is coming is not a threat. That's something that should be expected in a student organization, and the fact that that hasn't existed in the past and that's been the norm is absolutely unacceptable to me. So you could misconstrue it as a threat, you could say whatever it is, but the reality is that when you mess up, you have to be held accountable for your actions. Plain and simple.
Thank you, Mr. Desalvo. Seeing no rebuttals, we will move on to another audience question directed to Mr. Correa. How will you create a cohesive environment in ASCSU when historically you have been somewhat of an instigator in such a space?
I like that word, instigator. Sometimes when you want to put your ideas forward that a bunch of people don't support, it tends to be misrepresented. When people don't like your viewpoints, when people disagree with you, unfortunately that disagreement, it's not about debating, it's about arguing there. And I try my best to debate. I try my best to reason with people. Explain to them, hey, this is why I say this. I'm not just pulling it out of the air. That's what I want ASCSU to be, a space where we can discuss. I mean, Senate, the whole point of that space is to discuss ideas and issues and have rebuttals like we have over here. Is having a rebuttal over here a bad thing? I don't think so. And that's exactly what I want to say. Rebuttals are a good thing. We learn from that. And that's my whole campaign. That's what I want to focus on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. Seeing no rebuttal, we will move on to another audience question that is directed to everyone. We will start left to right. Please name one or two of the most important things you do during the planning process to ensure that plans are actually led to achievement of desired results. You have a minute to answer this question. I can also repeat the question if you would like me to. Yes.
Please.
Yes, I struggled on that question a little bit. Name one or two of the most important things you do during the planning process to ensure that plans actually lead to achievement of desired results.
So I think having them written down is very important. I usually write everything down before I say it or before I do something like I'm doing right now. Every time, even during our elections, I make sure I plan everything. I write it down the previous night just so that I can follow it the next day. And that's the same thing I want to apply to my cabinet meetings. For example, if we do have a plan, we write it down. We write the timeline of the plan, we write the outcome, what we want to achieve. We collaborate with that specific director, deputy director, or senator, but have everything written down and not just out there in the air. So having it written down, having a specific timeline on how we want to achieve it, that's how I want to achieve specific goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no rebuttal, we will move on to Mr. Trout and Ms. Ritter. The question is, name one or two of the most important things you do during the planning process to ensure that plans actually lead to achievement of desired results. You have 1 minute to answer this question.
Awesome. I'll start off with that. I think it's getting the right people involved on that team and making sure that like everyone is involved in it, and people have, if they're talking about specific things that have impact, talk to those impacted or students that are most impacted by those. So that would be my first thing. I'll hand off to Mia.
Yeah, and kind of going off what Mr. Correa had said, I have to agree. Kind of writing things down, making a list. I am a big list person, and kind of creating a calendar, exactly what events to go to. I'm such an organized person, and making sure that all the events are strategic, everything that we do, make sure there's a plan, make sure that there is something, and I have my checklist of everything that's gonna happen, and making sure that I'm fulfilling my promises, making sure that I'm not making empty promises, and making sure that I'm giving that to students and giving that right back.
Thank you, Ms. Ritter. Seeing no rebuttals, we will move on to Mr. Desalvo and Mr. Silverheart. Name one of the two most important things you do during the planning process to ensure that plans actually lead to achievement of desired results. You have a minute to answer this question, and the floor is yours.
So as I had mentioned before, I'm the Director of Health for ASCSU, and I've done a lot of projects this year, and something that's really important is working with organizations and facilities on campus in order to make sure that we're not redoing something that already exists, and also getting input from professionals, not only other students, but professionals. I work with the CSU Health Network a lot, and I don't know if Rithik knows this, but there's already relaxation pods in the health network that exist. So there's already things where students can go and nap on campus. It may not be as close as the library, and I don't know if you were aware of that information already. But it's important to know, and it's important to work with these kind of organizations and these professionals on campus.
The first part to planning is seeing if what you want to see to fruition is actually feasible. The second part is gathering a team of people who share your vision, because part of leadership is acknowledging and understanding that nothing is a solo effort. You need a team of strong individuals who share the same goals, and that's really what leadership's all about.
Thank you, Mr. Desalvo. We have a rebuttal from Mr. Correa. Reminder, you have 30 seconds for your rebuttal starting now.
Yes, more than a rebuttal, I'd say this is like an explanation. Yes, the proximity is one of the main points, which is why I wanted to be at the library. And yes, I do know it exists at the health network. Unfortunately, I have to go there almost 3 to 4 times a month for multiple different reasons, but it's whatever. So proximity is the main reason. Also, the health network, I don't think that has a 24-hour thing. I'm pretty sure you have to ask the receptionist, and there's a process for that, if I'm not wrong. I want this to be kind of open to all. That's how I'm like focusing on this particular thing. And
Thank you, Mr. Correa.
Thank you.
Okay. And finally, again, our question to Mr. Duffield and Ms. Ashenbrenner. Name one or two of the most important things you do during the planning process to ensure that plans actually lead to achievement of desired results. You have 1 minute, and your time starts now.
If anyone's seen my Outlook calendar, I pretty much plan everything from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. in my day. But I think another part of that, which I agree with Nick, that it needs to be feasible. So the way I decide which activities are feasible and which will contribute to that is activities that are low in urgency but high in importance, because and what I mean by that is things that don't necessarily have to be completed right away, but they're important to you and important to the organization in the future. So an example of that would be studying for a test a month out, things like that. So yeah, through time management, I really learned how to plan pretty much everything in my day to see everything through to fruition.
Yeah, and it's about making policy change that you can fix within your presidency, first and foremost, and your run. And then with that, building up yourself as well, building up a strong team to go with you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ashenbrenner. We will now move on to a general question for our presidential elects, our presidential candidates. We will start with Mr. Correa. Some students on that was the wrong question. U+2 is an issue that we hear about every campaign cycle. What will you do differently about the issue, and why do you believe you will succeed where many have tried?
So I think I'm really lucky in this case. Years of effort have been put in by ASCSU to get rid of U+2. And right now we have the most anti-U plus 2 city council. Even the mayor is against U plus 2. I remember she came to ASCSU and spoke about it as well. And I've been to a couple of city council meetings as well. And I know for a fact that right now, all we need is that push to get rid of U plus 2. So let's say we do get rid of U plus 2 during my tenure, if I am elected. It's not just me, it's the years of effort that ASCSU put towards this. I also have a petition right now, and I know it's not a binding petition, but it's something we can use to show that, hey, we want to get rid of U plus 2. There is a push to get rid of U plus 2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Correa. Ms. Ritter, you have the same question. U plus 2 is an issue we hear about every campaign cycle. What will you do differently about the issue, and why do you believe you will succeed where many have tried? You have 45 seconds to answer this question.
Thank you so much for that question. And like I said before, it's not just me that is running this. I believe that we have to work together as a team to be able to create tangible change and make sure that we have really great things coming to our executive cabinet, and making sure that the people working in city council committee, working in U plus 2, working in the housing and security director position. And I believe, hiring people that are passionate about those positions is a really great, amazing first start. And making sure that these people are very knowledgeable, and making sure that we're working together to create tangible change, and making sure that we're improving this solution. And I think that's something that has really lacked in these past few years in terms of trying to take down U plus 2 and making sure that there's tangible change, and making sure that that's kind of striking down, and making sure.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ritter.
Thank you.
Mr. Desalvo, you have the same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Awesome. You have 45 seconds, and the floor is yours.
I'm so glad that the mayor, Jenny Arndt's name was invoked by candidate Correa, because we are endorsed by Mayor Jenny Arndt because she knows and understands, and she has seen me physically at city council advocating for the takedown of U plus 2. Perhaps the most active pro U plus 2 individual out there, Councilman Kelly Olson. The first time I met him, he said that I was going to be a thorn in his side, and he was right. U plus 2 is an issue that has come up year after year, and it's acknowledging that we stand on the shoulders of giants, of people who have made great leaps and bounds to get where we are today. But it's a matter of actually putting in the work, and that's what I've done.
Mr. Correa, you have a 30-second rebuttal that begins right now.
I just wanted to say congratulations on the endorsement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. That caught me off guard. I was not expecting that. Okay. Mr. Duffield. Mr. Duffield, we have the same question. Would you like me to repeat it? U plus 2 is an issue we hear about every campaign cycle. What will you do differently about the issue, and why do you believe you will succeed where many have tried? You have 45 seconds to answer, and your time starts now.
The reason we didn't want to make U plus 2 a major point of our goals is because it's hard to beat U plus 2. And number one, in our D&I slide, it just says advocate against U plus 2, because that's pretty much all we can do. I'm in accounting and legal studies, and the Supreme Court's ruled that a partial taking is not an infliction of the Fourth Amendment. And since a partial taking is involved with how the city does U plus 2, so they limit it to 3 instead of limiting it to 2 people, or limiting it to 0, it's a partial taking. So it's constitutionally defendable, and which is why, instead of trying to be on the same level as lawyers who have been fighting this for 40 years, I decided, what can we really do on campus so I don't just slap U plus 2 on there?
Thank you very much. We have a 30-second rebuttal from Mr. Desalvo. You have 30 seconds, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what we could do about U plus 2. Shameless plug, April 4th, this is something that the City Council Action Committee has worked very hard on. We are going to City Council, we're going to pack City Council, and there has a deal been made with a City Council member that if we do pack the chamber, they'll motion to put U plus 2 on the ballot. This is an actual change that we could make, and I hope that every candidate on this stage puts their money where their mouths are and shows up for it.
Thank you very much. You have a 30-second rebuttal if you would like. Mr. Duffield.
What bill? What's involved in the thing that you're talking about? I'm just curious.
You can answer.
Yeah, so typically how it works to get something put on the ballot is that you could collect thousands of signatures on a petition to put it on there, but what council has the opportunity to do is motion to put an issue like U+2 on the ballot. It will be a referendum to the citizens of Fort Collins, and it will be up to us to overturn U+2.
Thank you very much. We now have a question from the audience that is directed to everyone. We will start with Mr. Correa and Ms. Laffey, excuse me. What are your plans for tangible action to make ASCSU a more inclusive and accessible organization for historically underrepresented minority students? You have 45 seconds to answer this question, and your time starts now.
So one thing I'd like to make very clear, and this is one of my core beliefs, it's equality of opportunity. Having that opportunity is what matters. The outcome varies based on effort. The outcome varies based on multiple factors. What should be provided is opportunity. And that's what I'm going to end it with. Opportunity. Equal opportunity should be given to everybody to access ASCSU. Thank you. You want to add something to that? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Ritter and Mr. Trout, you have the same question.
Can you repeat it really quick?
Yes, absolutely. What are your plans for tangible action to make ASCSU a more inclusive and accessible organization for historically underrepresented minority students? You have 45 seconds. Your time starts now.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. Again, it kind of goes back to my fundamental belief of nothing about us without us, and that's something that has led my advocacy within ASCSU and beyond. And so if there's something specifically for our students of color need to be the ones leading those conversations, not me. If there are students with disabilities who are demanding that something has changed, that we provide them the resources to lead that charge. And so that's something that I have done throughout my entire time within ASCSU, is be the support that those students need. And that's something that will continue throughout. And if you want to add anything?
I think you answered that beautifully.
Thank you very much, Mr. Desalvo and Mr. Silverheart. You have the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No.
Okay.
So I am an openly gay male. I was going to say homosexual, but those are the same thing. But I'm an openly gay male in the space, and so that allows me to really connect with the community that I'm a part of. I go to Denver Pride every year. Last year, I actually helped bring back the drag show to CSU, which is an annual tradition, and it's been around for a while. It went away with COVID, but I was part of the force that helped bring it back. It's important to note that while being LGBT, I don't have all of the different identities that are represented on campus. So I think it's important, and Nick and I have talked about this, not expecting students to come to us, but going to students, going to these SDPS events, going to these places where there are minoritized individuals that want and need to be heard. I think that's super important and really something that we stand for.
Thank you, Mr. Silverheart. Of course. Ms. Ashenbrenner, Mr. Duffield, you have the same question. Would you like me to repeat it? Okay. What are your plans for tangible action to make ASCSU a more inclusive and accessible organization for historically underrepresented minority students? You have 45 seconds, and the floor is yours.
Yeah, that's something we really wanted to find out during this campaign process. So one action I took to figure that out was talking with Dwayne Ruff at BAC, and we discussed how to make our executive team accessible to everyone. And he said really just advertising executive jobs in the SDPS offices and just chatting with them, seeing what they want to be involved in is really important in determining the next group of leadership. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Seeing no rebuttal, we will move on to another audience question, and this is again for Mr. Duffield. How do you plan to approach sensitive topics such as assault in the dorms?
That's a good question. I think I definitely would have to talk a lot with a team first before we design the questions that would be on however we format like if it's a Google form or however we get the statistics. I think it definitely has to come from using language that isn't triggering to people and involves as much collaboration from a team as possible.
Yes, we have a rebuttal. You have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
Yeah, I think that was a fantastic question. Oh, sorry. But I've been an RA in Corbett for the past 2 years, so I've been kind of on the ground floor seeing how freshmen experience life, especially as first-year students. And I think it's important to note that there are already things in place for students to access. As you've probably seen in a lot of the bathrooms, we have a victim assistance team on campus that's run through the WGAC, and that's where students can reach out and ask for help if they've been victims of sexual assault. So I just thought it was really important that that information is put out there, not only for freshmen, but for any student at CSU.
Thank you, Mr. Silverheart. And now that we are wrapping up our debate, we have one final question for all of our candidates. We will start left to right. Why should you be the next president and vice president of ASCSU? You have 45 seconds to respond.
So we're really committed to actual change, actual plans. If you check our Instagrams and all of ours, really, we were the first one to put actionable plans, several of them, onto our Instagram pages to actually talk about what we want to do for change. I know we all have ideas up here, but we really are for change on this campus. We really are for following through. And so...
Right. As I said at the start, vision, action, and results. We have a vision. We know exactly what we want to do, and we want to learn from folks as well. We have an action plan, and we will deliver results. And we deserve to be in this position because we will deliver results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Ritter and Ms. Trout, you have the same question. Why should you be the next president and vice president of ASCSU? You have 45 seconds. The floor is yours.
Thank you for that question. With our pillars of transparency, accountability, and inclusion, with Sammy and I, we've been here 5+ years with, being at ASCSU. We've been here a really long time, and I've seen the highs and lows of ASCSU, and I'm still here. I have seen ASCSU at its worst, at its best, whenever, I have been attacked so many times, but I'm still here because I know my why. I know why I want to serve students. I know why I'm in this organization and why I want to continue next year. I know exactly what my reason is to be here and what exactly that I want to do, all the tangible changes. I've thought about this a really long time. So has Sammy. So I believe that's why we would make the best candidates for this position.
You answered that beautifully.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Desalvo and Mr. Silverheart, you have the same question. Why should you be the next president and vice president of ASCSU? You have 45 seconds, and the floor is yours.
The thing that separates us is that we have a record to run on, and luckily it's not a criminal record. But we don't just simply talk about these issues. We don't put them on our campaign page. We live these issues. We've advocated for these issues outside of the campaign period. So it's not just about garnering votes. It's about actually delivering for students and doing what the student body elected leaders should be doing. That's what this campaign's about, and that's what our administration is going to be about.
I was also told by Kimberly Caraceto that my eyes have been really wide tonight, and I think that just kind of shows that we're very passionate people. We really love what we do, and we believe that passion really drives action. And I've had such an honor getting to know Nick through this process and learn about his passion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Silverheart. All right, Mr. Duffield and Ms. Ashenbrenner, you have 45 seconds to answer the question, why should you be the next president and vice president of ASCSU? Your time starts now.
I think through offering a fresh perspective within ASCSU, that will help maybe alleviate gridlock in potential policies or if there is any issues within that. I just want to be a person that students can reach out to and talk to. First and foremost, I don't want students of the student body to be afraid to reach out to ASCSU and just talking.
We're a fresh change.
Awesome. Well, seeing no rebuttals, that concludes our ASCSU presidential vice presidential debate. Thank you all for coming, and make sure to vote on RAMREB through April 3rd to April 5th. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your night.